Hello, good morning. I'm Ross McWilliam, and today we're going to talk about well-being of our staff, our people, and ultimately ourselves. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint. I'm going to come out of it and show you a bit about me interacting with you, and we'll do that straight away, shall we? We've got a little PowerPoint here about what I do, and Paul's very kindly asked me to do a presentation with you. So we'll talk it for about 35 minutes, 40 maximum. I don't want to bore people too much. And the presentation, you can have, there's some activities in here which I can't do because it's virtual. But if you want the activities, we've got a stress audit, we've got a stress bucket, we've got a trigger activity, and we've got some audio files for mindfulness. Lots of different nuggets in there, plus access to 20 one-minute strategy videos, which I personally created. All these things you can get if you email me at ross@rossmcwilliam.com with no fee, no price, no charge. Okay, so we're going to talk about well-being. I'm going to use some presentations. We're going to come out. I'll do some activities with you. But why listen to me? I'm 60 next year, which is like an old man in some ways. But when people are thinking of retiring and getting a pension, I'm thinking about how much better can I make myself? How curious am I to improve? I used to be a teacher a long time ago. For the last 10 years, I've been a freelance speaker, keynote speaker at different educational conferences. I write books on mindset. And I like working and developing people. And just recently with this COVID situation, I've got into Zoom, pro Zoom. And yesterday I had 80 staff at a school in London working with them. I've worked with young professional footballers, the National Citizenship Service. I work across staff development and consultation and coaching. And in essence, all I'm trying to do is help people reach the potential. And as I've got older, help them reach the potential in a calm, relaxed way that throws the best out of themselves. And I've learned in life that we've been so achievement focused and orientated and keen to do well that could actually obviate and stop us from becoming our best selves. So when we're in flow and relaxed and we've done the preparation, not just chilled and doing nothing, I think that aspect of being purposeful, professional, with good well-being, you will see the best things in you, and other people will too. And sometimes in my job, it's all about listening to what people want, not judging them, and delivering on promises. So that's a bit about me. I've been to about 1,500 schools on the time and a range of different organizations. So well-being. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on today. Again, 35 minutes. We'll talk about stress, cortisol and adrenaline, identifying it, stress bins and triggers and audits. I'll look very briefly at the 4 pillars of well-being of diet, sleep, exercise, and being connected, especially, with COVID situation, being connected is something that we're compromised with at the moment. So it can have a real subtle effect on our well-being or lack of it. And the last bit is about strategies. I'll do a strategy in between, before this, and I'll do a couple at the end, but the rest will be referenced. I don't want this just to be a one-dimensional, virtual, here's a strategy, here's another strategy, here's another strategy. Because I do think the sticky plaster approach of strategies, that is the problem. We're trying to solve something that's more than what's in front of us. And I think with well-being, we can become stuck very quickly with that. Okay. So it would be remiss of me if I didn't talk about the situation we find ourselves in. 5 weeks in, and we've got a massive change to our life. And around the world, not just now, but anytime we talk about change, the Kubler-Ross change curve comes up. I've been in about 5 or 6 webinars recently, and they all mention it. And this is a classic one here. There are different ones of change. There's one about grief, but this one's about change in society, emotional responses to change. So if you look at this, in shock initially, when something happens like COVID, we're in shock and surprise, disbelief. And then, it comes into denial. And some people, we've seen this flaunt in the lockdown. I won't catch it. I won't want to do this. I believe it's all lies. I think it's something to do with the phone mass. But most people then go into a series of frustrations. After novelty kicks in and goes, we're frustrated. things are different. We don't like it. I don't like being told what to do and what I can and can't do. And some people, big trench of people, then go into depression at the bottom of the curve, low mood, lacking energy. And what fuels this is there's no end game. We can't see a strategy. We can't see a date. We don't know when to see our friends. We don't go back to work to make some money, to start feeling better. But there are a good portion of society that will look at this as an opportunity, as I'm doing, to experiment with the situation, to get into Zoom Pro, to look at different audiences, to look at how my life is and reflect. Do I have to travel as much as what I'm doing? Do I enjoy the travel or not? I can then work and decide on how I want to work with, how I want to work. And, I can find myself coming up that curve. So as much as it's a situation that we didn't want and we probably don't like, we can always get something out of it. If I want to summarize that, it's awareness and acceptance of moving along the curve. People get stuck because they don't know where they are and where they're going. So if we're aware that we're going to go some down moments and some up moments and accept it and use it, it's a very positive thing that gives us very subtle and maybe subconscious and very conscious hope. Have routines, but be prepared to change routines, building flexibility, as I say, to flex your routines. In the 80s, I used to work in Saudi Arabia, and I was there for a year without a break, which is unheard of, and 6 days a week working on a military base for an American company. It was very pressurized. I was young, I was in my 20s, and I could handle it, but I couldn't handle it for 11 months straight. I did, but the outcomes weren't as good as what I thought they would be. And I'm feeling a bit of that angst now a little bit. Routines help you, but routines, if they're the same ones, can pressurize you, and then it can drain you. Have lower expectations in this time. I push myself a lot. So I want you to have a slightly lower expectations. I want to work for 7 hours a day, and work a bit less. Take the heat out a little bit. Raise your rewards. Reward yourself for something. A bit of time going outdoors in your hour. Have an extra nice meal. Talk to somebody on Skype. Don't beat yourself up. It's still an opportunity. And again, the immune system is very important at this moment in time to protect us against COVID. And if we're eating good food, wholesome food, fruit and vegetables, some cooked, some raw, with exercise, I think this is a massive thing to help protect us psychologically and physiologically. But the thing I'll say is be careful of the alcohol. I stopped drinking 2 years ago, and a massive effect on me, massive weight loss of 6 stone and clarity of thought, and I suppose better with the business side of things and more relaxed with stuff. But the immune system, if you're pounding it in a negative way by excesses of alcohol, poor diet and lack of exercise, it's not a good time to be doing that. That's all I'll say. Social media and the news, if it's upsetting you or depressing you, don't take it so often. Maybe don't take it at all. It's up to you to work it out. If you become obsessive on this and have people who email me about it, what's the news said today, what the news said today, then they've got it all wrong. Because they're almost wanting, in a subconscious level, the bad news, which is not the way to go about it. Obviously, at this day and age, these last few weeks, keep your distancing, keep washing your hands, good routines. Support others and model behaviors. If you're a parent, model it to your kids. If you're a friend, model it to your friends. If you're a business owner and director, model it to your colleagues. Very important that we model the behaviors we want to see in others. And always have hope. Now, in my life, I'm almost a jack of all trades at times. I won't say a master of none, but I do lots of different things. Every year I do a course for my own CPD. This last year I did the mental health first aid instructor course, which was 15 days working and presenting and learning and evolving in terms of mental health and well-being. And I use a couple of slides from these people that put the courses together, and I'll put my slant on it. And I go up and down the country doing this sort of stuff, and it's interesting that the feedback I get most of the time is not just about the content, it's about the engagement and delivery. But what influences our mental health and therefore our well-being? Parents are a massive thing. You can't choose your parents, but things along siblings and rivalry and support and traumatic events and uplifting experiences, confirmation by words, deeds, and actions. Sometimes our genes, they reckon, some of the evidence I've looked at is depression's 33% genetic. If you've been in prison, your society in terms of where you live, the noise levels, your quality of life, your poverty factor, your stigma, discrimination, LGBT have more stigma attached to it, as the disabled have, which can affect your mental health. And again, things that can improve it: protective factors, developing confidence, problem solving, this resilience, respectful relationships, tied up with emotional literacy. And this engagement and helping people out in the community side of things are really positive influences on our mental health. So everybody's slightly different. And when I talk about stress containers afterwards, everybody's got a different size of stress container. So what works for one person might not work for another person. What works as well for someone might not work as well for somebody else. It's very bespoke. And that's how we might feel. So, I'm going to come out of this for a little bit and just talk to you about some of the stats out there which you might be aware. Now, we're talking about well-being for adults, but, as adults, we start off as children. And some of the key facts there, at the moment in time, 1 in 4 experience a mental health issue. This year, 1 in 6 altogether. 1 in 8 have had a panic attack, as I've had over the years, and I'll come on to that at some point today. But, the key things for me, there's two key areas. If we get to age 24 without a serious mental health issue, there's only 25% chance of getting it afterwards. So most mental health issues, and therefore well-being issues, start in between 0 and 24. So if we can get through that gap, it's a brilliant one. More women than men suffer from stress, and men make it worse by doing risk-taking behaviors like drinking, alcohol, and drugs and smoke and antisocial hours and behavior and stuff that seem to be more associated with men. They almost like precursors for mental illness into more serious things like bipolar and psychosis and personality disorders that really impact on our well-being. And in society, women are generally more stressed than men, twice as much, in fact, some of the stats call it. So the whole plethora of information out there about mental health and more vulnerable. I mentioned before what disability and LGBT are more vulnerable to mental health and therefore well-being. But I want to draw your attention to this, and some of you won't be at this age, but between 50 and 64, and some of the stats say 55 to 64, is what's called an invisible gap, where we think we're being strong and resilient and very achievement-orientated, but actually we could come a cropper there. And a cropper as much as that we could actually think we're doing everything well, getting a good professional job, getting to that pension, and all of a sudden we're beset by challenges in well-being, in our emotions, our cognitive behaviors, and it's something that we must be aware of. And this is where I'm saying being too resilient, push, can work against us. It relates to cortisol and adrenaline, its performance, which I'll come on to very shortly. But for now, I'm going to reference this gap, the invisible gap between 50 and 64. I fell down this gap. I had a series of panic attacks, and looking back, it was clearly obvious it was going to happen. But at the time, I thought I was invincible. But nobody is invincible. So part of this today is raising awareness. Part of it is giving you some strategies. But part of it is making you aware that, well-being is great, but we're not invincible. Let's go back to the presentation for a little bit. Okay. And let's have a look at this now. So let's look at some chemicals in our body that affect our mood, which has a direct relationship to well-being. Dopamine, the reward hormone. This is something that helps us learn on our 100 billion neurons in our brain. Dopamine must be present. So if I'm teaching anything somewhere and learning people, I'm trying to give them some reward at the end, maybe with you guys, the presentation, the downloads, and the free resources. It helps us learn, it keeps us motivated. Serotonin is the happy hormone. If we're happy and we feel safe and secure and we're enjoying the presentation and we're learning a little bit as well without being lectured at, these chemicals are going to be released. It makes us feel good. Oxytocin is the hormone that's released when we're in love. Endorphins are the feel-good hormones when we exercise. When these are present consistently and regularly in good doses in our body, it's so much easier to automatically involve with well-being. It would be of well-being. Okay, it's something that happens naturally. And when I had a lot of panic attacks, the serotonin in my body got depleted because I was push, and fell down the gap. Now, adrenaline gets a bad rap. And adrenaline is something that helps us perform. We get it every day. It gets us out of bed. It gets us up in the morning. It gets us going to our place of work. It gets us driving through traffic. It's great. And it makes us perform. And sports people, artists and musicians, without adrenaline, they'd be flat. The problem with adrenaline, fight or flight or freeze hormone, sometimes it comes into play with too many situations in life. This came back from prehistoric times when we're surviving all day long, threat of dying. We don't have that today. And so sometimes this system is a bit too sensitive to the arena we're in, the environment we're in. And so if we're constantly pressing on adrenaline to perform all the time and pressure ourselves to do this, to achieve more and stuff, we wear ourselves out. Not only do we wear ourselves out, but a dangerous chemical called cortisol can be released. Now, cortisol in essence is a good chemical. It helps us perform better. It helps us manage our emotions. But if we constantly keep getting aroused and stressed and everything during the day of different magnitudes, regularity, intensity, and frequency, too much cortisol over time will literally rot our organs. In the short term, it will suppress the immune system, which we don't want in COVID-19 time. It could increase blood sugars, makes us more vulnerable for things like blood pressure issues with our cardiovascular system and diabetes. And also takes away from serotonin, the happy hormone. So there's some things we can do to increase these good hormones, and there's some things we do, maybe we're not aware of, it takes away from them. If you look at a consistent line there, the blue line, I'm colorblind, I think it's blue, and the other one's green, I think. So the blue one is the adrenaline that goes up and down during the day. If you've got too many spikes and too many highs, short term is okay, long term is not. Because what you're doing, you're releasing cortisol. And over time, that cortisol will rise. The longer it rises, the more stress we're going to have in our body. Maybe we're aware of that, and maybe we're not. And I was doing some teaching in Staffordshire. I'll take it off here for a second. I do some teaching in Staffordshire, and I was talking about some of the symptoms of stress. And this woman was saying, I'm feeling stressed at the moment. And I was saying to her, well, do you have pulses? Yeah. Do you feel sweaty at night sometimes? She says, yes. I said, do you feel that you can't cope? Yes. She said, please don't tell me anymore because I think I've got cancer. I said, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think you have. I think it's classic panic attack symptoms where they're presenting with you, and you get through the day, and when you finish off in the day, it starts. And so it's almost a relief to say to her, to speak to, your doctor, is it panic attacks? And go and do it. She was too scared to go to the doctor, thought she had cancer. And cortisol can do that for us and put us in situations of like that. So it's like this. So if you have like on here a stimulus, and if your stress then comes to match that stimulus, we have good performance. But if that stimulus is there and the stress we produce is higher than we need, so we're overperforming, overstress, let's do this, let's do it, let's do more, let's do better, it scares me, let's push through it, let's be resilient, let's be strong, you're actually getting too much cortisol and adrenaline in the system, which will wear you out. So every time you get a stimulus, you must match it with the right sort of response. If we go too low, then we can't be bothered, we're a bit relaxed about it, and that's okay, but we won't get good performance and improvement. If we constantly keep going over it, we're in trouble. So if we're talking about these hormones then, which are massively important in our body, we're talking about an area, you might have heard this, the amygdala hijack in the brain, where basically in milliseconds, the adrenal glands produce the adrenaline and cortisol, and it goes to our brain. And it floods it so quickly that we can't think with our prefrontal cortex. It blocks it. So much so, it's like a thermometer going up. So something can happen, and all of a sudden, you get panic mode. Now, if you look at the New York Book of Lists, they say the second biggest fear is death, but the biggest fear is speaking in public. So you'd rather die than speak in public. I know that they sort of obviate each other, but think about that for a second. The biggest fear people have is speaking in public. And if you're scared of speaking in public, then this cortisol and adrenaline is going to rise all the time. Just the thought of it, even not doing it, rising. If you're constantly responding to something that's not a threat to you, as it was in prehistoric times, you're going to get killed or not by some wild animal. In modern society, if you're responding too often, it's going to make you unwell. Short term, maybe. Long term, definitely. So we need to control these emotions and be aware of them and just go with the emotion rather than fearing the emotion. So I'm going to show you a little activity now that you might want to think about and do sometimes. It's based on neuro-linguistic programming, and it's about breathing. It's about visualization. So this is a simple one. Let's go through the mechanics first. So I breathe in, I hold, and as I breathe out, I squeeze my finger and thumbs together. And I just bring an extra air into my lungs and focus my mind, taking all negativity out of my head and not thinking about the challenge ahead of me. But now I might do it in a slightly different way. I might visualize this cortisol going down. So this time I breathe in, and as I squeeze and breathe out, I think of the cortisol going down, almost blowing it down. I sometimes do this with children who are angry, and I have a snow globe, and I shake it up, and I say, breathe in, breathe out, and try and blow those snowflakes down, and keep doing this till all the snow's down. It's a good coping mechanism to get to ground zero again in our emotions and stop this cortisol and adrenaline manifesting itself. Another good way of doing this is think of a time when you're excellent in something. And sometimes when I've got some maths or stats to do, when I failed maths before, I've got a bit of an emotional scarring on that. And if you said to me do maths and stats a few years ago, I said, oh, I'm not sure about that, and I might get a bit nervous. I then try and find an emotion, an experience that was good around stats. And when I was at PE college in the 1980s, I came third out of 60 people in stats. And when I came to the exam, it was too easy. I had lots of preparation, I had a good teacher. So now when I get nervous about stats, I breathe in. As I breathe out, I think about that stats exam coming third and I say to myself, Ross, you can do it. You've done it before. It's a good mechanism, this, for catching yourself, not letting the stress get too much beyond the stimulus and almost enjoying what you're doing. Okay, lots of good things there. And I've got all this stuff for you, which you can come back on if you're not sure about it. Okay, so let's just think, how are you feeling right now? So as you're sat listening to this, and I hope you're still here, if you put a scale on between 0 and 10, where are you right now? 0 being you're nice and chilled and relaxed, 10 means you're climbing up the walls, you've had enough, you can't stand it. And it's interesting, isn't it? If we put this in context of, say, a Sunday night, how do you feel on a Sunday night before work on Monday morning? And when I ask this question to a lot of educational professionals, they always have it higher on Sunday night than the reality of Monday. And it's a human bias, a negative bias, that we always catastrophize the worst thing scenario. So I might have a 7 or 8 on Sunday night. When it comes to the Monday, I might have something that's a 4 or 5. Because we're always thinking the worst is going to happen. And generally it doesn't do it. But if we're thinking the worst things, and then we're reacting for that stress level, the cortisol and adrenaline's coming out, eventually it's going to hurt us. And when I talk to these professionals about this constantly getting upset and stressed all the time, you know, they don't know about this invisible gap at 50 to 64 where they could come unstuck with panic attacks, or even worse, cancers or heart attacks are very prevalent if you're overstressing all the time. I once spoke to a pension company about how do you calculate pensions for people? How much money do they need to earn? How long are they going to live for? And there's a simple answer. If you work for 35 years in teaching, got to your early 60s and retired, you have an average of, wait for it, 8 years. 8 years to live. Wow. And yet some people still rush through life, get to that end point, get to their pension, and then they might die. 8 years in average might be less, might be more. I know one thing's for sure, if you're not stressed with life, you've got better well-being, you're probably going to have longer out of yourself at the end before, but you can't rush to get to the end or stress yourself so much that when you win by getting the pension, you lose by dying. I knew a woman who retired before she got to 60 in teaching. And I asked her why she retired. She said, you know that Sunday night feeling? I was getting on Friday night, thinking about the full weekend before the Monday. So how do you feel right now? Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? On a scale there. What people don't know is the difference between stress, anxiety, and depression. So stress is good. Hans Sale in the 50s coined it, and he coined it in a good way. Stress is good. It helps get out of bed, helps us perform, helps us get on with the day. It's when we get too much stress, or we respond to the stress in a higher way, which I talked about, too much frequency, too much intensity, it can work against us. Anxiety is when we worry about something. For instance, I could worry that I don't like bumblebees, but there's no bumblebees in the room. But I still worry about it, which creates anxiety in me, adrenaline, cortisol, and it depletes the serotonin and the dopamine. It works every way against me. So we worry, don't we, sometimes, like the Sunday night to Monday, and it's not good for us. Depression's where we seem to can't cope as much, come from 2 months to 6 months, and it's where we're not coping very well at all. And if we keep being stressed and anxious and worrying, there's a good chance we can fall into depression, especially the ones who have more genetic feel towards that side of things. And we talk about things in the body affecting our mind and our brain and our body, but they're both interrelated. There's a gut-brain axis. What happens in your body, you can feel in your brain, and what happens in your brain can affect your stomach. And really, some of the things I'm trying to make you aware of today is that word awareness of how we're feeling, and don't just push through and be resilient. Because the gap will wait for you at 50, and the pension won't wait for you the 8 years after that. But before all that happens, you want to really thrive and enjoy your life, not survive. So if we get stressed and anxious, what are some of the warning signs that the woman in Staffordshire didn't connect on? Shortness of breath, easily distracted, poor concentration, stomachache. When I get that sharpness in my stomach, I know it's not right. But I'm not sleeping well. Sleeping is the window to well-being. The window to well-being is sleeping. If we're not sleeping well, you're more vulnerable. But when I get impatient and all a bit stressed, noise gets me. Too much noise or little noise, what people don't think is bad, I'm thinking, don't make that noise. If the refrigerator goes at the wrong time, it's like, it shocks me. I know that I'm not relaxed. I know I need to slow down. And my issue is I try and do too much. If we're talking about depression, some people don't know they're depressed, just think life is like that. But if we're not sleeping, we've got an under appetite, an over appetite, poor memory, feeling isolated, not connected in this moment in time, in COVID time, this can people slip into this depression. We show that graph before, the Kubler-Ross curve, and depression was at the bottom. When we're sad and we're guilty and we're numb, we're tearful, we can just cry at any moment. They're good signs of depression. And a lot of it can come around, if it's not genetic, it can come around from this propensity to be stressed all the time, to keep performing, to keep pushing, to keep challenging. And young people, especially when their brains aren't developed, they need this time to stop thinking too much. Okay? It's a difficult time for them, but we need to calm ourselves sometimes. This one, exercise stress bins. This is a free download for you, ross@rossmacwilliam.com. Just very briefly, everybody's got a different size stress tank based on those previous slides of our backgrounds, our parenting, our siblings, our experiences, our social and economic environment. All these things, I might have a bigger stress tank than somebody who's a bit younger, perhaps, and maybe I can take more stresses. So that's the first point. The second point is that I want you to try and put your stresses into the tank and write them down. And a lot of psychologists will tell you, when we write stuff down, we capture that thought and it stops it wearing away at us to a certain extent. So writing stuff down as a general principle is very good. If you put it into a stress tank, it's a great way of seeing it. Then put a cross through the things you can't change, like the weather, like some of your friends, unless you dump your friends. But some of the things you can't change, like your job, or that you want more money. At the moment, you might be able to change it. So put stuff down that you can't control. It's useless worrying about stuff that you can't control. Focus on the things you can control and influence. So the ones that are in there now, without the crossing, think of ways you can cope. And it's a great exercise to visually see this. So if I'm thinking I need to get out more and do more stuff and I'm missing that sunshine, the way I cope with that is that I go to Spain every 2 or 3 months to get some sunshine. I feel fantastic. Being outdoors, the vitamin D, different people, less pressure, less stress, it works for me. And it's the same with this. People might do exercise, which is a great way to do it, and a healthy food. Be careful in exercise because it could become obsessive, I know, because, hey, that's what I do sometimes. And with a diet, don't get too strict on yourself because you can end up winning by all the right ingredients, but you're an edge all the time if you have something bad or you think it's bad and it's not working against you. Well-being is about being in the moment. So ways to cope is a good way to do that. Be careful of alcohol because it's a way to cope. Too much, the glutamates can reduce when you're drinking in the morning. They double up, make you feel more depressed. The other thing I've got for you, another 2 handouts here, is a well-being audit. There's a range of questions that numbers are pointed to these questions. You get a score at the end of it on the right. I've got a great handout for you for that. Give you a snapshot where you are at the moment. And the good thing about snapshots is you can go back to them in 6 months' time and do it again and see the comparison in the scores. It's a great way to track and measure progress. And I've got also another activity, triggers. So identifying triggers, I'll give you a sheet of about 10 or 11 triggers, and you can add some more on. Then you can classify them like in a SWOT analysis and find which ones are bugging you the most and attack 1 or 2 at a time over a period of time, because otherwise you change everything at once overnight, you become overwhelmed. So it's about being strategic, and it's something that makes you more aware of what's getting you upset. For instance, one of my triggers, I don't like traffic wardens. I don't like queuing on the phone. I don't like talking to Barclays Bank at the moment when something's gone wrong out of my control and I can't get in touch with them. I'm aware of it and I try and drop it a bit more. Okay, I'm going to come off this now and I'll do a little activity for you. This is one of my strategies that I use called open coaching. I'll give you a series of questions. You don't have to answer them, just think about them. So they're rhetorical and reflective. So think of an issue that's bugging you at the moment. Think of a simple issue. And let's put a score on this. 0, it doesn't bug you that much. 1 or 2, a little bit. 3 or 4, it's niggling you. 5 and 6, it's an issue. 7, 8, it's getting upsetting you. 9, 10, it's really getting you driving the wall. So put a value on it. Okay. Next question. How will you feel about this issue in 6 months' time? Will it be different? Will you look at it different? Will it have changed? So in 6 months' time, how will you feel about it? Who else can help you with this challenge of dealing with it? Have you got somebody you can talk to? If there's somebody you can be vulnerable, share your thoughts about it. Sometimes when we talk to somebody, it might not solve it, but the process of talking and listening non-judgmentally is very powerful. So have you got somebody who can listen to you without judging you? Have you got enough resources to solve this challenge of time, of money, of expertise? Have you viewed this in your own blinkered view? Have you really seen the problem of what it is? Is it a problem? Could it be an opportunity? Is it a 100% threat? Like COVID for me, to go into use Zoom Pro, I wasn't really into it, but now I quite like it. I work with 80 staff on Monday and Tuesday in schools in London. Are you perceiving this challenge in the right way? What else could you do or think or say to beat this stress now, to beat this challenge? I'll give you a few questions there to make you think and reflective. If you had to score yourself on this stress again now, between 0 and 10, how would you score it again now? Would it be different? Would it be lower? Interesting exercise. So I've got this on the presentation for you, a series of questions there. So you can go through that and you'll have the presentation after. It's just ross@rossmcwilliam.com. We're coming on to strategies and the 4 pillars now. So I look at this as an analogy in life. And I think strategies are great, but like a sticky plaster to a problem. They sometimes work, but generally they don't work on their own. We've got to think of the whole person. And I look at this as a house. So the foundation of the house is self-esteem or self-worth. And the main frame of the house, the inner skeleton in the house, is like confidence and resilience. Confidence, not being scared to say, do, or think things. Resilience to push, but also to come back and adapt. Those parts of the house need developing constantly. You can't ring fence them. We've got to keep working them throughout our lives. But if we don't have them in place, or they're weak, or they're not strong enough, any strategy will not stick. So this must be in place first. Once we've got this, we can put the 4 pillars of diet, exercise, sleep, school, or work around the center of a core, which is family. Whether you know it or not, everything shoots off from the family. The diet, the exercise, the sleep, work, school is in this building. And the family gives us belonging, identity, worth, and expectation, and aspiration. It gives us hope, it gives us belief. We're working together as a team. Now, the stress could be the weather that goes on the building, the rain, the snow, the wind. And here's where the coping mechanisms come. The strategies are just like the materials, like the paint coatings, the damp course, the roof and the bricks and the shutters on the windows. That's how I look at coping mechanisms. They're okay, but on their own, without the foundation, without this foundation of the self-esteem, the confidence, resilience, the pillars of exercise, diet, sleep, and being connected, they're not effective. So it's a great analogy if you look at how we need to be well-being in the world. Let's kind of run through now the 4 ways, aware of these triggers. So eating is very crucial. Try and keep away from processed foods. Try and have more vegetables and fruit. Sometimes cooked, sometimes raw. I have a NutriBullet. Keep away from fizzy drinks. The caffeine levels are crazy. It will make you pulse, most people, after drinking it. The pulsing is one thing that can precipitate nervousness and an edginess, which some people crave, young people, but there is damage to the cardiovascular system. And if there's another thing beyond awareness today I'm going to give you, is keep away from heavily laden caffeine drinks. Coffee itself's okay. If you're going for lots of double espressos, that's a factor you've got to consider. And also if you're drinking coffee after 12 o'clock, because coffee has a shelf life of over 8 to 10 hours. So if you're drinking coffee at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're going to bed at 9 o'clock, it's still in your system. So I always try and say at 12 o'clock, have your last coffee. Then you've got 8 to 10 hours before you sleep at night. It shouldn't be a factor. Even decaf coffee's got caffeine in, about 1/10 of the amount of caffeine for regular coffee. So don't keep drinking that thinking you're safe. Maybe you can have a bit shorter time, maybe 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, but then cut it off. Lots of different things on food. I don't want to patronize you with that. That's just a quick introduction. Exercise. Let me say something straight away. I used to be a PE teacher. I love exercise. I do it religiously, and that's my problem. I do it too obsessively, too religiously, and it can work against me. And I'm feeling at the moment the pressure performing in COVID to do the exercise and the routines. I need to have some more down days and some not as intense days and less frequent days. But exercise could be outdoors. It could be gardening. It could be making something, smelling something, producing something, working with somebody else. It could just be walking, getting the vitamin D, being outside. Every time I go to Marbella every 2 or 3 months, I feel so much better. Not only do I lose weight, but I feel great. It's something to do with being outside. So anything that's outside, that's stretching, that's flexing, Pilates, yoga, meditation, try and do it outside because you will get the benefits from it. Sleep. If you're having a problem with your emotional state and your well-being, look to sleep. There's a woman, Jeremy Vine's show, said, listen, Jeremy, I don't have coffee after 12 o'clock. I go to bed at 9:30 every night. I have lavender on my pillows. I have no phones or blue lights in the room. And my room temperature is about 16 degrees C, just below. Just a bit cold and a bit warmer. There's no artificial light in there, and I still don't sleep. And Jeremy said, that's it. Your routines are too hardwired. What I said at the start today, flex your routines, it's very important. So sleeping is very personal. Why we sleep, Matthew Walker, the sleep doctor, talks about lots of different things in there. And Guy Meadows talks about it in the Daily Mail. All I can say to you is that use it as a thermometer to test how well you're feeling. Because if you aren't sleeping well, it's only a matter of time before that catches up with you. If you're compromising sleep by staying out late, by having additives, drinking too much, we're drinking at all, and having noisy environments, it's going to impact you quicker than you think. So sleep is the window to emotional health. Build your tribe is massively being connected. In this Corona COVID time, I said to you before about have your expectations lower and raise your rewards. Because I'm saying that because we're not being connected enough. Okay, we're not meeting people, hugging people, seeing them. And this can have an effect on us. And this researcher, Brené Brown's got 2 million followers on Twitter. And she writes plenty of research articles and books, Braver in the Wilderness, which is about being strong and sticking up for yourself. And she talked about being connected. And she talks about being in a choir and singing, how it can reduce pain, how it can make you feel good and raise those chemicals of serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. You might fall in love with the choir. And the endorphins of doing something. And that collective community spirit is something for our well-being. And she witnessed this in Australia with the Socceroos playing Liverpool. And before the match, they all sang, "You'll Never Walk Alone." And she said the hairs on the back of my neck stood up and it made me feel good. So I'm going to replicate that now. You're watching this on your own probably. And I want to see if you can sing along with Neil Diamond to get the serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, and whatever else is in there up at the same time, reduce the cortisol and adrenaline. This is fun. It's not exercise. Brilliant. Where it began. Nobody's watching. I can't begin to know when, but then I know it's growing strong, 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 strong. Was in the spring. A bit louder, please. And spring became the summer. Who'd have believed you'd come along? Getting warmed up now, we're getting warmed up. Don't be scared, get it out there. Hands, touching hands, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Are you ready? Let's go. Sweet Caroline. Oh, oh, oh. Good times never seem so good. So good, so good, so good. I've been inclined, oh, 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 to believe they never will. No more of that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're like me now, you're a little bit of buzzing. The cortisol's gone down, the adrenaline's nowhere to be seen, the serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin are flying around my body, the endorphins are catching them up, and it feels good. It feels really good. Just remember that. Now, we can have some strategies we talked about before, like, this wind and rain and on the outside of the house. CBT is very good for anxiety, worry, depression, alcoholics, and the talking therapies, which is the leader of it. There's lots of mindfulness, which we'll do a little bit shortly. We've done some NLP already with the breathing and visioning and being confident. Now, again, I'll do a couple of these. The rest you can get on my YouTube site at Ross McWilliam. And there's 20 videos of different 1-minute strategies. I've got in this presentation some mindfulness links to some really good guys at Oxford University, Penman and Williams, Mark Penman, Danny Williams, brilliant stuff. And some other things as well as you can pick up. I would say though, that for good well-being, you might have to at some point, as I did at the time reluctantly, went on some medication, they call them SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And I had lots of stress. Looking back, my mum and dad were dying. I moved back to my parents' house, look after them. I needed a new knee and ankle. I was 7 stone heavier than what I am now. I was drinking too much, not eating right, not doing much exercise, writing 3 books and falling out with people. Wow. And it came and it grabbed me and it shook me up. I had any of those panic attacks for 3 years until last week, when I realized in this unique circumstances we're all in, I've been pushing myself too much and getting frustrated with Barclays Bank and with other things and trying to produce a lot of content. And I felt the pulses again, the precursors. My sleeping's been all over the place. Sleep's a big one. I don't want to go back there. Some people, they need to go on them, come off them, maybe stay on them. It's an option. Don't see it as a weakness. Well-being may be a part of this. Okay, so Pepper and Williams talk about a chocolate mindfulness one. I've got a link for this one for you, but I'll just talk you through it very briefly. You get a chocolate, and every time you have a thought, you push it away to have the chocolate in your hands. You concentrate on the chocolate, and you unwrap it and feel the wrapping paper. And you smell it and smell the smells of it. A few seconds each time. You put it in your mouth. You don't chew it. You then chew it, and then you swallow it. And each time you're doing each stage of these 6 processes, you're just thinking about the chocolate all the time. Chocolate's got 300 flavors, apparently. And what you try and do is give the brain a break. Relax it, focus on the chocolate, recenter yourselves ready. Okay, ready for a challenge ahead, or just ready to calm yourself. It's a great little exercise, and I've got the audio for you there. There's some audios for you there.
Okay, so what does this involve? Well, simply to control your anger and even turn it into something useful like passion with a focus, with good work. And imagine Amy with a smile on her face. Yeah, as a good girl, simply imagine Amy with a big smile on her face. Now you're ready to channel that passion. This is my Amy Buster.
Okay, there's one of my strategies, 20 videos at rossmcwilliam on youtube.com. Some on popping balloons and putting our thoughts down there, very powerful. Some mindfulness exercises of walking and breathing, great breathing exercises. Ono Kane talks about Want to Zen, a great book title about how to get ourselves in the zone every day. High performing professionals are known to use this method and technique. And there's some techniques then for some younger people as well. Okay. 20 ways, should I say, to help you very quickly go through these breathing exercises. Exercise, be in nature, play, acupressure, drink more water, write it down, psychologists like that. Massages, laughing, visualizing the future, stretching, maybe in gardening, sleeping, catnapping, sense, remembering things in the past like music, support each other, eating better, family time, daily rituals, leaving work at work. Mention music. Let silence be a savior. 20 different ways there that you probably do already. Sometimes I think, yeah, I know that. But when I go back and revisit something, that's great. Mental Health England talk about a plan, call it RAP. How can I help myself? Don't be a victim all the time. You need support, but what can I do as well? What's my maintenance plan? What are my triggers? For me, it's Barclays Bank, it's traffic wardens, it's people who don't come back to me. And then I try and look at the warning signs through my sleep. If I'm getting frustrated through the day or the noises, and then I try and plan when I'm in it and when I'm out of it. Public Health England, they've got Every Mind Matters, a good resource there as well. Okay, so at the end, I've got some resources for you there. And I'm going to take you into the big screen just to wrap things up now. So we've had a conversation there, probably about 35 minutes. Some things you'll know, some things you probably won't, and I imagine, because, you know, I'm 60, I've been around a little bit, do a lot of reading, lots of qualifications, lots of different talking to people. And I think you pick up things, sometimes not new things, but things that are just polished a bit that suit you. So let's be aware of how we're feeling. Let's try and strive towards better habits. Let's be careful of that sleep aspect and diet and exercise. Try and be as connected as possible that suits you. By all means, try some strategies. Find the ones that work for you, but you must use them regularly. That's what things work in life, when you practice them regularly. But it is a journey, and don't rush to get to the end, because we know what happens to teachers, for instance, after 8 years of retiring. Bit of a sad note to end on. If you need anything else off me, ross@rossmcwilliam.com. I'd like to thank Paul Harvey for giving me the opportunity to talk to some like-minded professionals. Thank you very much.